Hi, welcome to a Roboflow training movie. In this training movie I will give you a couple of options of deleting files and folders, both by using Roboflow or by calling an external script. A nice case example is that imagine you have some files in a catalog, and in that catalog you want to delete those files, maybe after processing them, moving them to somewhere else, or copying this to somewhere else. But imagine that you want to delete a folder, a file, and if that folder is empty, you want to delete that folder where this file was residing. If we have a look at Roboflow, then I created a little workflow, and this workflow I am going to first disable this, and I will explain in a minute. And I am going to disable this, which I will explain in a minute too. If I want to process this file and I look in here and I want to say, okay, I have this file, and if this file is deleted, everything inside here needs to be deleted, then the process can do this with simple Roboflow instructions. However, sometimes files are like these kind of files, could be locked, hidden, or could be not available as normal files for Roboflow. So then we might have to look for an alternative. The first thing you need to check when trying to do something like this is, do I see the files or the folders that I want to process? So I've written a little action script that finds that particular record, and then it takes the file from the record, which gives it file object. I test if it exists. If it doesn't exist, there's no point in trying to process it. And then I'm storing the folder path, and then I store that as a folder. And then this is something I explain later. And then I will process all the files in that folder, and I just output every file that I find. So if I run the workflow like that, start, and I do a show log, I see that I find a folder to delete, which is this one, but it doesn't show any files. The reason for that is, first of all, here on this process files, I've added a regular expression. I was only interested in finding the files called .ds_store. That's why I didn't get any files, because a dot file, a file that starts with a dot, is considered by Roboflow as a technical file, as usually a hidden file, very often created by something like macOS, or can be just a type of file that is usually not to be processed. So that's why it is not showing it. And there could be a lot of kinds of files that you don't want to process normally, but that you do want to process here. So I could say, I want, if the file has in its name, for instance, if the name is anything, any number of files, and then a dot, and then temp. You could say, okay, I want my temp files and the XML files and all the sidecar files that you normally don't want to. You want to list them, and if they're present, then you want maybe to delete them. So you could call a delete before trying to empty this. And you could also count the number of files in there that that match this description, for instance. And so there's lots of things you can do here. It's just outputting them. Now, as I said, Roboflow is ignoring these files. So if I don't add a special parameter, and this is the special parameter to add, by default you will never process them, so also never see them. So I could say true in this case, and now by setting that special parameter and I run the workflow again, I can find show log, I can find those DS files. You can see if they at this point are still not showing up, then you have a problem with the user that is running Roboflow. If your Roboflow is running as a service, as a Windows service, well then that Windows service needs to run as a certain user. If you're working on network shares, this traditionally is running as a domain user with all permissions on that particular user. I'm just running a local test, so it's local system, but in real life this is usually a domain user with full permissions to see these files. So if these files that you're looking for do not show up, then you have a permission problem. You're not seeing the files that you're supposed to see. No matter, that's not the end of the world. I have added to the workflow, instead of processing these files individually, if you're saying, okay, don't worry, I have a folder that I want to delete, and the Roboflow user has the permission to delete that folder, then what you can do is you can use a normal instruction in Cumulus to say delete folder. In Roboflow, you could add a normal action that deletes a particular folder. But so what I am doing here is I'm starting here in the beginning and I'm creating an empty table. An empty table in which I am, for each folder that I'm processing, storing the element. So I get the path of the folder, and then I'm storing that in that table. I'm saying the folder path, and with the same key, I'm storing that in that table. And then when I come to the very last item, after I've processed everything, then I can say, now process that XML table, that table that I created, and here I'm writing the folder that I am going to delete, and then I could then do a normal action and say delete folder. And so I could go in here and go to delete folder file. And so here you have a couple of options in delete folder file, like delete empty folders, delete, etc. And you can do that. If you tried that and still it will not delete that particular folder, then you can just use an external batch file. So I created a batch file in which I say remove directory. You could also say I don't want to delete directory, but I want to delete all the files in there, or all the files with a certain file extension or whatever. Then you could I created also a second, so you could also use something like this, which will delete any file in that folder, including subfolders, etc. And that's another option you could do. But what I'm doing is I'm calling the my delete folder, and as a parameter I'm parsing that folder path to delete, and I added the key because here I'm processing row by row one lower, sorry, here. So here folder path to delete, and which automatically gives you access to the folder path to delete, but which will be an array, the element that comes back. But it also stores under this same tag with the suffix key, it stores the key, and since I created this table by putting as a key the folder path, I will get the folder path. Okay, then if you have this, then you can have that external application. Make sure to put an exclamation mark here. It makes sure that it doesn't wait and wait and wait, expecting for some more feedback. It just will trigger on that. Or you could prefix it with the word exit : which will also test whether the result is successful. But on a batch file, it is always successful. So it's not a guarantee that it was really executed. So if I now say that I want to delete that folder as a just precautionary test, I added this test in my workflow so that I could do a dry run without it being deleted. So we can go to the record here and I can do a show location, and the show location shows that I have a folder with a subfolder, and so I want to delete this stuff. I'm saying, okay, I'm at the end of my workflow, I've processed everything, and now I want to delete this. So I can go one level up. You can see here's the folder. I made a backup copy because I wanted to be able to do this test several times, but that's how it is configured. And so let's keep this one. And now I launch the workflow. Show log. And so what happens is it finds the files and then finally it calls the delete instruction, and it says the end, which means it's finished. And if we have a look, now that subfolder has disappeared, and if I do this show location, of course it's not finding the record anymore. It's taking a while to figure that out, but the file is no longer there. So that's how you can handle extra or this offers extra functionalities to delete files or to delete folders instead of depending on the standard Java Cumulus Roboflow way of deleting files, which offers you standard functionalities. But in case there are some permissions issues or the files are hidden, then it gives you the opportunity to do it in the hard way by calling an external script, and then you can decide, am I deleting one file, or am I deleting one folder, or am I deleting the files in a folder? That all depends on your call, on what you want to on what instruction you want to call. Here I'm just passing the folder path, and then this script does whatever you defined in that script to do. And so in my case, I call this instruction. Okay, so thank you for joining this little training movie, and hope to see you in the next one.